Imagine opening your email to find years of history deleted. Only a single email remains. A ransomware request for $2 million. You think to yourself, how could this happen to me? You see, there's two types of companies. Those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. The weight of responsibility comes crashing down on you. It's the sort of responsibility you feel when your family is craving a delicious pizza. You finally open the box only to find the most cringe-worthy topping that you mistakenly ordered. Join Pineapple on Pizza podcast as John and George, along with guest executives, discuss the most common and craziest cybersecurity risks, followed by actionable tips and strategies that can be implemented to protect your cyber risk pie. Pineapple on Pizza is hosted by Omnistruct.
Welcome to another episode of Pineapple on Pizza with your hosts, John Riley and George Usey. Today, we've got this really cool guest that we've already been having a lot of fun with. And he's inspired the book, The Magic of Thinking Big, teaching how to achieve goals with positive thinking and action. He's always on the lookout for hilarious memes on LinkedIn. He's a passionate golfer who loves to challenge himself on the course and is actually pretty professional. And then on top of that, he's the Chief Commercial Officer. Welcome, Abraham.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you guys.
And it's great to see you.
Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to actually be here Friday. It's a wonderful day to do a podcast.
So we're going to jump right in here.
Let's do this.
Here's our thing. So if cyber risk was a pizza, what's the riskiest topping you've seen and what would you equate it to?
The irony here is I am like a cheese and pepperoni pizza kind of guy, so anything's risky. No, I'm just kidding. No, really though. But I would have to say, I'd have to go out there risky. I would say, we're throwing it out there, maybe some anchovies and some pineapple mixture with a little bit of olives. I couldn't hang. That's I would equate that to, honestly, it really falls into the court of when you're dealing with additive manufacturing as a whole and making parts and machinery, equipment, all these things are involved in all these various types of equipment. You tend to come into a lot of issues as far as anything from IP issues, security from file sharing, a lot of NDAs in place when you're rapid prototyping. So you have everything from the DoD all the way, running the gamut down to, private sector. So there can be some challenges there. And I would say that that's just inherent and natural for, as we progress, as additive manufacturing is now becoming more of a regular, more of a household term, otherwise known as 3D printing. So that's what I would have to say would be right around those ranges. Yeah.
So tell me this, in your role as the Chief Commercial Officer for your company, what's been keeping you up at night?
Besides customer satisfaction, because I find that as things go faster, we tend to, not necessarily take the time to service said customers. Along with that, you have just everything from the comfort and the brand, trust, but also, again, everything down to the security of their information, personal information, whether it be purchasing, financing, you name it, everything down to, again, personal and IP information. For me, I think what keeps me up at night too is just my personal drive to always deliver an amazing product and build and create something that is manageable, sustainable, as well as scalable, so that people are not necessarily buying a boat anchor or purchasing a product that doesn't necessarily work with them. And it's a tool, it's not a sale. I don't want to be a used car salesman. I want to actually provide this. So that's what kind of keeps me up at night. I want to provide that solution, right? So it's like a saw with many blades for the craftsman. He doesn't have to buy a lot of saws.
George and I can relate to that. We actually worked in a hardware store many years ago selling saws. Well, one of our friends did, but yeah, I did plumbing and electrical. George did some paint and
Oh, really? Yeah. I've been obvious. I mean, that's the thing about additive manufacturing. That's the difference between what we would call deconstructive manufacturing, right? Like CNC. You take a solid block of material and you hone it down to this part. Well, all this wasted material. Yes, you can recycle, etc. But you can see my background, right? That's additive manufacturing right there. You're building from nothing, thin air, and as you're making this additive unit, which is extremely useful across the board. I mean, it's anything from coming up with an idea to a final part. That is what now the power is of 3D printing. That's where we come in as an actual OEM manufacturer. We're here in Austin, Texas, and we actually manufacture this 3D printer that does all that stuff. So
excellent. So what are your biggest challenges in regulatory requirements? I mean, in your industry? I mean, there's gotta be
you have things like we have like power usage, right? So like, hey, where's this thing going and how much power is it going to consume? You have things like off gassing, and you have environmental issues like HEPA filter involvement. Does your machine filter the air? Does it need to be vented, etc.? You have things like Wi-Fi accessibility to the module and how you're printing or transferring files. Is it a hard? Are you using it? Our system, you're capable of doing both. Again, we built that system specifically to do so, and we have things in place from previous manufacturers have followed the specific guidelines that meet or exceed that safety requirement. So we have all the safety nets kind of built into the individual components before we have amassed them into our new, I guess you'd say, user interface, which was what you interact with and how our files are transferred. So.
And is there like a network of these items that because I mean, you said that they're Wi-Fi. I mean,
see, that's the thing. It's like a printer. The printer's the size, if you would imagine an oven. So you roll an oven into your office, you plug it in, and so you're at your computer and you want to send it, just like printing at home. So we've enabled that Wi-Fi transfer and everything, but the Wi-Fi componentry, that's already been handled by the.
You're using standard chips. You're not.
Yes, sir. That's what I meant to say. I'm lost for words. Yes, it's already standardized. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
So it's nothing new, and we're having some
yeah. You're not building your own chips. You're putting the pieces together to make.
Yeah, well, because there are. I mean, obviously, we're not going to manufacture certain products. We're not going to manufacture that degree. But we're hand assembled, and we design and manufacture everything that we can here in the U.S.
I was wondering what's the risk of safety, and is that, I mean, imagine there's safety and security. I'm sorry, not security, but safety and injury potential when, like, with lasers and and all kinds of other kinds of manufacturing. So is this one of the benefits? You kind of reduce that risk with 3D printing?
So, yeah, the thing is with 3D printing is it's well, depending upon the machine you get. Like, for example, the one we make it's an enclosed unit, it's heated, it has a HEPA filter, it plugs into a 110 outlet, so you don't need any excess. So there's a huge benefit to that, and that's why we went the way we did. The market has solutions, but the solutions, it's kind of like you either you buy a surgeon's knife or you buy a pocket knife with all these. Sorry, my hands are waving pretty fast there. With all these various abilities, right? So you're either good at pretty good at a bunch or really finite. So our machine, it does that in both regards, and the reason why is because we wanted it to be like you said, a solution so that it reduces the amount of challenges. So now you don't have to have different machines. You don't have to have a lot of different inputs, and reducing the amount, I guess you'd say, of challenges, meaning the material you put into it, right? It's pre-bound, it's on a spool, it looks like spaghetti. You get that from a supplier that's already we've now built the profile, just like when you put it through a regular paper printer, the glossy paper, etc. That's already pre-established. The amount of airflow, the heat, the temperature, all these things are all they are specifically calculated in order to, minimize everything from power usage, which we've done heat testing, power consumption, the amount of off-gassing for certain materials, and that's where we're getting into that, to reducing all of that. Anything from a cybersecurity standpoint to a health standpoint to altruistic standpoint, and then the sustainability as well, meaning that you can print hybrid materials like hemp and recycled fish nets and plastics and things, which is quite phenomenal. So
I just always thinking in my mind it was plastics only, but that's
no. And so that's the thing with 3D printing. So now that does it, it creates a whole nother challenge, because now we've opened up kind of Pandora's box, not necessarily, but to a degree, meaning, it's almost becomes a too good to be true. Like, oh, there's no way all this, the cat's out of the bag. Like, no way. Actually, yes, it's just what it is it's It's just understanding how it works. And right, for example, if I tell you we can make a metal part, we can 3D print a metal part from our machine, like you see in the backdrop. Yes, we can. However, there are post-processing steps, and there's these, these things that fall into place. So you have to, it's like managing the expectation of building a home, right? Like you see a final home and it's like, oh man, that must have been just like real bam. Like, no, it's always 2 weeks, right? Like, no. Like it took a while to get on the cover of that magazine, like from breaking ground and pouring a first slab. And that's where we have done all that work, and we had tested the waters and done all that. So now we have created a machine. It's called an IDEX. It's a dual head. It prints 2 heads. It can do 2 materials. It can combine 2 materials, right? So if you're trying, now you're expanding into 4D circuitry and all these other different things. So again, back to the tool portion is that it's a tool that allows engineers, rapid prototypers, manufacturers of any product, which we're selling a lot of these to, because now it opens the floodgates. Like, oh man, I have a company, for example, right now, one of the larger manufacturers of dental like equipment, chairs and etc.
Yeah.
They typically they make everything out of metal because they want it to the base of the chair, right? The where the wheels go. They want to print that for speed. And the problem is post-processing. That's what I was trying to say. So educating people and that's where we come in. And yes, we built this, but you have to understand this is the expectation. We educate you. We minimize all of these things, everything from getting your file from your computer all the way to final product, right? So it's soup to nuts, and where we support, where larger companies are not doing that. Even mention not to name drop, but names that you typically would use at home that make computer and printer parts that components that you currently use, and they do that in the 3D space. And there's lots of, and everybody does a great job at things. However, I feel that we have now come up with a secret sauce, if you will, that kind of more or less designates us in a unique way. That's both were good individually and at a myriad of things. So now you can do flexible material, like a flexible part that like TPU on the protective knuckles of a glove, right? And there's off gassing, all that stuff when you're making things like that. So you can sew a glove, you make these things and they stitch them on there. Those things like work gloves, flexibles. You could make a hybrid hemp material, or so I got a hemp builder that builds componentry that for the bracketry. So he has the lumber, etc. And now they were using metal and sustainable recycled aluminum, but now they can actually print like L brackets and beam brackets that are ridiculously strong and inherently light.
That's incredible. So I imagine somebody's got to be buying something from you. Is it the consumer or is it the maker that's buying, or both?
That's again falls into like a unique reason, or unique, I guess, not niche, but what we do is we fall into it. So what I've coined it as is it's prosumer grade, right, with industrial manufacturing capability. So let's say you are a small company, and I say small meaning you're Amazon, you're in your garage, you're making motorcycle parts, mountain bike parts. Hey, I'm making levers out of a hybrid carbon component, whatever, and you had this unique design that's ergonomic to whatever your finger joints because you studied the movement of the first 3 knuckles for the last 10 years. Okay, great. You can now either finance it or purchase it due to the price point. That's the whole point of this conversation, or these points that I am making, is there's nothing that you can get out there that's comparable in price. So now to answer your question, so now I can now start, I had this idea of doing this business. Oh, how do I get this? I have to do a mold, I have to go to overseas, etc. How am I going to get this, etc. I can tap into an engineer, get the files, work with that. I can either purchase my machine, or I can actually have the machine work with, bring them on over, like rent a warehouse out, put a few of them in there, and boom, you're off to the races. I mean, yes, there's more to it, just like the TV shows when they have like in the house, the final product. But it is that easy in the sense of it's once you're educated upon that, like you are now, you start getting light bulbs and you start looking at things like how I do naturally, of how things are comprised rather than as a whole. So like you look at a car, and when I look at an engine, I see of all the pieces that make it. I could 3D print that bracket. I could make this. You could go around your house, like I could make those things that hold the thing on that hold my towels and toothbrush holders and letters and it's ridiculous what your mind just starts looking and thinking to just making, which just now is just phenomenal, right? So prosumer grade. I started out in my garage. And now I started this company, Unique Bike Levers, and I can make it, and I can custom color it and custom. So now again, open the gates now, because this guy's educated. He's smart enough to use it, which most people are, right? We're on a video conference feed here. We were able to put together a wonderful show. You guys have a great track record of doing what you do, by the way. And so it's just an example of yes, it is that easy, right? But it is that powerful at the same time. So yeah, prosumer grade industrial. So you could buy 100 of them, went on a warehouse, and make, you know, parts, which is what's happening like in Utah and Idaho and all these manufacturing states that are picking up on this. A guy just like, for example, there is, like, if you go to Home Depot, right, there's this guy and he's making them. I don't necessarily need to mention the name, but he, you know, built a warehouse, did the whole thing. And so he landed the world's large, not the world's, I shouldn't say that. He just a very, very large, like we're talking multi-million piece, meaning printing millions of pieces. If you can imagine, you go to Home Depot, it's an oil thing, I don't know. And then there's this tab that holds the nozzle on the side in retail. They 3D printed that little thing that goes on the bottle and holds the nozzle. And it's a million of them for a million bottles. So you talk about, can you do volume? Can you do this? Is it? Yes. And that is the difference in understanding how you get there. And again, that's what we came up with. A large volume, you can print small way detail, large volume, various materials, price point, fits through a US doorway, plug and play. You know, we've taken into consideration all the security components along the way. And we're all about meeting, exceeding. We're going to, you know, show the world what we can do, type of thing. And so along with people like yourselves who are, you know, we're just hoping we can do what we can and make a great product, make people happy, and actually use it. So I've actually used it and I love it. So it's got me looking at things completely differently now. And I hope you guys now, you'll probably start looking at it. I can make that bike seat. I can make.
Our job generally is, you know, I mean, there's, lots of great ideas, right? Our job is to figure out, what are the hackers thinking? Ooh, how can I do bad with this, right? You know,
Yeah.
so
you have because you have an online community and you have a whole consortium of files where they're all hosted, and people be sitting there and they making, you know, excuse my slang, but they be making all these files, you know, and they'd upload them. And it's like, hey man, so there is, you know, there's hustle, there's all this, like, you know, hey, I want to, so if I'm going to spend time and make this, I don't know, whatever, I'm going to 3D model these, right? Yeah, I'm going to put them on that website, and that's going to charge $14.99 a download for the file, etc. But now that it's on them, because now I've signed the contract with them, they're but I'm allowing that, right? Versus, so there's a lot of avenues there. It's kind of like, it's like cigarettes. It's like, you know, it's bad for you, but you do it anyways. I mean, there's everything, there's always going to be having an inherent danger, but there is a lot of trust and the community's tight. And, you know, it's a great community of, you know, additive manufacturing as a whole, for like, you metal and exotics materials. That's, you know, and then you have your plastics and your normals. That's what I call them anyways. But, you know, you have your different, and then you have industrial stuff. They're making rockets like Relativity Space and all these other crazy, if you go to Long Beach, right? They sent the first all 3D printed rocket into space, you know, a couple of weeks ago. It's phenomenal. Really? Oh yeah, I mean the 3D printing. So if you look at like the new most, like one of the most expensive Cadillac EVs that just came out, most of the components in the interior are all custom 3D printed, right? So if you watch the movie Red Notice, right, with that just came out in the intro, that's a 3D printer. That's a resin 3D printer, but they use, and that's how they print the fake gem. You know, like the new version of Indiana Jones, they're replacing the sand with the, yeah. So they've replaced the sand with 3D printers. So, yeah. So if you want to talk about like excitement and awesomeness, like it's pretty crazy. You know, Adidas, right? I bought a new pair of shoes. Adidas, my shoes are 3D printed. The soles were 3D printed. So, yeah. The bottle opener in my kitchen is 3D printed.
By you or by somebody else?
I printed the 3D bottle opener out of metal. It's downstairs. I'm not going to run downstairs.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I should have had some of these samples and been like, look, but I didn't, you know. Yeah, you get, it's fascinating. It's very fascinating. So anyways, yeah.
I have a nephew that probably has like 6 printers, by the way. And so
does he? Oh yeah.
So
I mean, and that's, you know, for a few $100 you can get into the hobby, you know what I mean? Start making stuff, no problem. Ours, you know, we sell a printer that's under $50,000. That is the size, I would like to say it's the size of an oven, like a gas oven, right? You open up the hood, like, you know, so it's like what you can print in the box. Let's just say like 3x3 or 4x4, you know, it's a box. I mean, I have, it looks like this actually. So. I don't know if you can see it, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Fully baked product.
Fully baked. Yeah, right. Yes, I like that.
Sorry,
that's awesome.
It's Friday.
So no, Friday. This is the best time to have these types of talks. I'm not kidding. It's the best.
Dad jokes on Friday. Welcome.
I know. Hey, hashtag dad jokes on Friday.
Maybe that's been another podcast that we do. All right.
Meanwhile, I'm back at the podcast.
You know, I tell you, everything's mostly exciting about this. You know, the only thing that worries me is got nothing to do with anybody else but me. And that's because I'm a blacksmith. They're like, oh, you're going to take my work.
Yeah, no, I know. That's the thing is it's like open sourcing though. Like, but it's like, I know it's like a physical equivalent, I feel, of like, of WordPress, open source. Like, you can steal my website. But I feel to a certain degree, it's like if you're making something, doing greater for the good, for mankind, so to speak, and you're making a buck at it and you're winning, and somebody else is able to do well by it, I think that's, it's great. And that's why I do appreciate it. I do get what you're saying. It's funny. Absolutely. But no, some of the private stuff though, like, so for example, when you say that, like, let's say some of the DoD stuff, right? So we're positioning ourselves to get a couple of our units specifically, right, into these applications. And the things that I can mention, I would have to say are, for example, it's Wi-Fi enabled, it's this, that, and the other, and transferring of files. Well, we can't have that. They can't have that because they work on a specific internet and they have all this stuff. So you can't have files transferred. So we it has to be basically configured, meaning like, these things are, it's hardwired or whatever, it has to accept their stuff. You know what I mean? We can't have things printed on, et cetera. It has to be very mutant colors, et cetera. So, but a perfect example would be like Humvee clips, that hold on the tarp that go in the back of a Humvee, and they have to order these things right ahead of time. And like the cost of a clip to get, shipped, right? So how do you do that, right? Well, how about we airdrop this so it lands on I forgot the acronym, it's like CPAP or something, right? Not CPAP, but it's Command whatever Central, CMOC or something, right? So when they have the outposts, well, the cost of the printer is like the cost of like 20 clips, because like the clip, like you think it's a little plastic clip, was that 5 cents? No, each clip's like $300, because if you factor in everything it costs to get a clip to hold the thing over the troop that's blocking the sun so he can perform, et cetera, it's kind of, I guess, I want to choose my words carefully, silly, if you think, like kind of comical, like, wow, this little plastic clip, albeit here, I can go to Walmart or whatever, order it on Amazon, it'll be here tomorrow. But if you're in the middle of the desert and we are out of them, oh boy. So that's where something like this comes in, right? So, but again, the safety, that's closed source. They're going to have their files. They would have to designate, nothing exists outside of that box. And so it would be from their unit to our enclosed circle, and that's it.
That DoD thing, we definitely are familiar with that.
Like from drone bodies to propellers to landing gears to door handles to, like, you name all sorts of stuff, to things that hold instrumentation that break, all these things that break under stress and heat and duration of time and stuff like that. So, but like to be able to print a clip instantaneously to hold a tarp over something would be, so just to give you the perspective of wow factor again.
Yeah, we're getting closer and closer to, well, as a kid, I used to watch the Jetsons.
Yep, you're talking about the Maker Box, right?
The Maker Box, that's right.
Yep, that's an iteration actually our company's coming out with. We have a name for it and everything. I won't tell you what it is, but it's essentially that. So we're working on 4D circuitry, right? So instead of the wafer being the real estate being on a flat board, right, PCB board, etc., this way, a flat green one. So we're building them like Rubik's cubes, if you will. So we're printing 3D circuitry because we can build the material and then we build silver conductive material. So we're building like armature. Oh shoot, what can I tell you? So if you can imagine an armature that requires a motor at the end of it, right? And there's a motor here that has to drive something, and the brain is up here. Well, we can print the material, right? And then the electrode leading material in between, sandwich in between, build the post, and then it's a pick and play to pick the motor, places the motor, prints around it. So now you have this armature, if you will, that can now be plug and played when replaced armature from the existing armature that's broken. So now you have no wires, you have no crimping, you have no leads, no screws, you have no rivets. There's just, sky's the limit as far as reduction of cost for material. But also then you have like the flip side is the efficiency now of just everything, as you can see. So it's a domino effect. It's just pretty crazy how it flips. And that's, again, you got to start putting your mind into additive manufacturing. So you're making as you go, just like you said, Jetsons, instead of having to get these components, reduce, cut, chop, weld, grind. And it took me a while too. And even now I'm still like, wow, like I've been doing this a minute and I'm still like, it's just that I feel is what's going to propel us even further in the market. And if you go to one of these larger trade shows, your mind will be blown. And what's going on now, technology in that sector, as far as anything from the private side all the way to mainstream manufacturing, medical devices, aerospace, It's absolutely mind-blowing. And if you haven't seen it, I'd suggest taking a look at it. It's just, at the very least, it's entertaining.
Speaking of trade shows, I mean, are there any trade shows that you would suggest people go to learn more?
Absolutely. So there are 2 trade shows that I've been to this year that are phenomenal. There's one local coming up in Austin. So the 2 that I have been to that are absolutely phenomenal are IMTS, and typically most of these shows are located in Chicago, because it's the only place that can sustain a show of its size and the power demands, etc., that are required there. Everything from Wi-Fi, cybersecurity, raw power. We're talking multi-million-dollar booths here. Aren't robots that are picking up cars. I have a video of a Corvette being picked up like it's nothing. Crazy stuff. IMTS out of Chicago, same with Rapid TCT. So IMTS is all like anything under the sun manufacturing, including additive, everything that's phenomenal. And then you have Rapid TCT, same thing. That just happened again in Chicago. That's all additive focused. Phenomenal show. We attend every year, so you can see us in our booth, creative3dtechnologies.com. Name drop. No. But we do have one coming up. Honestly, all jokes aside, it's called Form Next, and they host it in different areas. So they're hosting in Austin, Texas, coming up in August. So that's really exciting, and that's again additive focus. So if anybody around wants to come check us out, we will be there showcasing. But even it's not even really us, it's more like you said, where we'll be, come check it out just for the sake of checking out the industry. So like, again, I'm not trying to push any sales tactics here. It's really just, honestly, I enjoy seeing people, meeting people. The shows are getting more and more exciting and packed with all sorts of various, focuses of industry. Motorsports, I just wanted to say too, is magnificently huge in this space. Ford is, makes a lot of their hypercar stuff and all their with additive manufacturing, a lot of NHRA drag cars, like we're talking the scoops, the intakes, the manifolds. It's absolutely fascinating. I have some videos and photos that would you guys. So after the show here, I'll have to send them to you so you guys can check it out, so you can enjoy it. It's really fun.
Cool. Is the IMTS event already happened this year?
Yeah, it's already happened. Yeah. But if it's coming up again in the I think it's fall or winter, I forgot the exact date. Apologies. You just Google it real quick though. But I would suggest just even attending, expanding your network, educate, everything. It's just a great place and a great event to experience quite a wide variety of things. I mean, drill bits. I mean, we're talking oil. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. Cutting edge technology stuff. It's great.
So I mean, what excites you about the future? I mean, there's all these cool new printing and all the,
Yeah. I mean, what excites me is like, for example, you got like Siemens, and they're building, automated hands. This kid 17 was able to figure out how to create the algorithmic pattern. I don't even know what you even call it. That, you put a couple sensors, it's able to, like, I don't have a hand, and you put on this 3D printed thing, and it literally like a real hand. It was unbelievable. I've never seen the articulation before like that on a hand. That's blowing me away. So medical prosthetics, the intricacy for evacuation systems or manifold systems for like implants. Oh my God, dental. So my father was a surgeon, an oral surgeon. So I'm kind of partial to the oral stuff and the dental stuff. That's why I mentioned the dental coming, but 3D printing crowns, you get a 3D, you have the scanner capability. So you're scanning stuff, you're getting STL files, and there's various file forms, right? And there's just a handful of components, if you will, to make the process happen. So you have a scanner, you have the software, you have a slicing software, which able to, if you will, imagine a tree. If you were to take a tree and go reverse time in tree rings, right? Visually, all the layers that made up a tree, that's kind of what a slicing software does, right? It's all the millions of layers that make up and where the print, it's kind of where you start, stop. So if I were to take whipped cream bottle and I went on a table and I started somewhere and I went in a circle and I met where at the end of the circle, right? You're going to kind of have like a little glob, like how precise is that nozzle to stop the pressure to where it meets that other one. So it looks like it never started or stopped. And that's what like slicing. So there you go, come into a component with that. What excites me about that is there's software like that. So you'll never know where it started to stop. So you can make these micro vacuoles for like a thing that goes in your heart. So there's zero friction and zero chance of it clogging and things like that. And it's made out of material that doesn't like adhere to fat. I mean, like I'm like, what? Like, so yeah, there's just an unbelievable stuff. Everything from that to defense stuff to automated materials. To when I say automated materials, I'm talking about materials that are automatically made through adjusted AI and machine learning. And so the part is actually made to be better as it's made through time, which is mind blowing. So you're making a part and it's getting better. Like, what? Okay, awesome. But like this thing over here to my left, you're making this lattice structure, if you will, an ice cube. Well, guess what? Nature mimics and has pretty much the best structural integrity out there. Like you take a sponge, right? A sea sponge, that's inherently strong. Like pumice, like you rub your side of your pool with it, it floats, but it's really strong. It's light, but you can stand on it. Same thing with these structures. So if you look at these structures, you're 3D printing, like the shoes, the soles look like sea sponge spine. It's just like a web, and it's crazy. All the helmets now, the NFL helmets, I think a majority of the major manufacturers now are 3D. I just shared it on LinkedIn this morning. They are 3D printing all of the impact resistant zones in those modular. Yeah. So anyways, a lot of exciting stuff. I can go on for days. I'm freaking out over here. Like, what's up, man? I'm freaking out on Mountain Dew. What's going on? No, I don't drink Mountain Dew.
So it's been a good morning for you already.
Yes.
Well, so tell us, okay, so tell us a little bit about you. I mean, you're down in Austin now, and I mean, how does one, become Abraham?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. How does one come in? Well, it's crazy because I mean, I come from so my folks, right? So my dad was a neurosurgeon, like a specialist in the medical field, like big time, big wig, right? And then you got my mom, who's like an artist, who was a professional artist, mixed medium stuff. So I got both brains. So I have the ability to do both. So I can look at something analytically and come up with creative solutions, or see a creative thing and see the analytics behind it, or derive analytics from it. So that's, I think, like the first step to becoming Abraham. Second is you mix in a bunch of ambition and what I like to call naturally caffeinated. I just was luckily raised by a father who was driven, very introspective, very Tony Robbins. I was doing Amway demonstrations when I was a young kid at the age of 4 type of thing. I started playing competitive golf at 9, traveled during high school, that whole thing. So everything from that to whether it be my collegiate experiences, my professional experiences, I was a professional athlete in the motorsports realm for a while. I'd say maybe 11 years. I was a professional freestyle motorsports athlete, sponsored by some big names. So I had to become an ambassador and, represent these companies to the fullest, not only just because I was, the representative, but I actually believe in the product. So that was another thing that makes me who I am. Is I say typically because it sounds so definitive. It's, let's be realistic, but I stand behind what I choose. So whether it's a car, whether it's a cereal, I don't eat cereal, but anything I get my name on, I put my pride and my hard work into. So that's kind of who I am, where I come from. There's just a lot of experiences that have shaped me. And ultimately now, as I'm growing older, I find a lot of value in getting my hands in or being involved with products, services, or initiatives that are, helping people honestly feel better about themselves or do better in life as a whole. And also advance just human nature to be, I guess, more of a whole and kinder species. I'm thinking that is kind of like my ultimate drive. I know it sounds maybe a little hokey, but it's true though, because I feel like at the end of the day, we're getting a little, I think we're getting a little ornery, a little ahead of ourselves. And so I'm just hoping we can find some accommodating things. And that's why I have that type of perspective. And so that's who I am now. So I'm just hoping I can put a little bit out there and hopefully we can stay positive and we can build some really cool stuff as a team, as a community.
All right. So here's one of those loaded questions for you, right?
Oh boy, here we go. Ready?
So if you could go back in time and give your younger self advice, what advice would that be?
Oh, 2 things. I would have to say, invest in Las Vegas real estate when I had the chance, when it was dirt. And 2, I should have moved forward with my idea to have a shared website where you upload your video and you create a profile. I think it's called YouTube now. Yeah, I should have moved forward with that one. It was called Motorsports Tube, actually. So I just, those are the two things I should have. I thought, nah, nobody's gonna. I started it, we did it, never did. I think nobody's gonna want to spend the time to put their stuff on the internet. Like that's a lot of work. They gotta, they gotta film it, they gotta upload it, and no one's gonna want to do that, right?
Well, especially back in those days. I mean, yeah.
I know, it was because it was work, right? Like you gotta like this and like
Hours to upload.
hours to now it's just, So the funny thing is here I am going, coulda, woulda, shoulda, but no, honestly, I don't think I'd go back now because I wouldn't be who I know it sounds silly, but I wouldn't be who I am. And man, we go through these times up and down. I don't know, I'm sure everybody does, where you feel like you're king of the world and then you feel like you're lower than low. But as I get older, I do, a lot of crazy things have happened the last few years. You got the COVID stuff, you got all these things happening, the world's changing faster than fast. And we've talked about a lot of things, tech this, safety that. I mean, really bottom line though is just kind of finding a rhythm to where you can just pull little bits of joy out of things, right? And these little wins, these little victories, they all add up. And I think that vibes with other people. And that I think is a bigger challenge, is staying positive day to day, because it feels like a lot of things have now been turned into challenges. And it's not a challenge. Like we're so lucky to be able to do the things we are. So watch out for these loaded questions, man. I'll go off.
It's good. It's good. I mean, our goal is to get to know you and help our audience to get to know you and all these cool things that you're doing. So that's the point of what we're doing here.
True. I mean, I came from Traxxas. I mean, initially, so I came from Traxxas, RC Cars, the world's largest RC car manufacturer. So a lot of 3D printing involved in there. I was a part of launching a handful of mainline products, and I took a stance of making our video content and doing some handful of things differently, right? There's an example of, who I am, where I come from, but it's funny because you're so involved in one industry and you don't really realize it. And then you go into an industry that literally you were using while you were at another company. It's like, wow, this is awesome. So a lot of times you feel like you're the biggest thing since sliced bread, but you can go to the gas station in the corner, nobody knows who you are. And that's what I'm trying to hit at, is like, being humble and realizing what you're doing is the biggest thing, because we all get caught up as thinking we're the biggest thing since it's so funny. And that's like being an athlete, like you think everybody knows you, like, yeah, do you know who I am? Like, no, I don't know who you are. And I've had a lot of conversations, even to big people that I follow. I'm like, do you know who this guy is? He's a professional golfer. Like, oh, I don't play golf, I don't even know what the heck you're talking about. I'm like, oh well, wah.
Puts his pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else.
Yeah. So I mean, that's again like getting starstruck and all that kind of stuff. It's like it's not that I'm blasé and I don't care. It's more like it just doesn't light my fire, because I think you're focusing on the wrong. It's like, man, we all eat, we all go to the restroom, we all put our pants on one leg at a time. So I mean, I try to stay as humble as I can, because once you catch that wave of thinking there's a difference between, cocky, confident, right? Thin line. But once you catch the wave, anything like that, you go the wrong direction. So again, like I said, peaks and valleys, we've all been there. Point is to try and minimize those and just try and create a cadence. I think we can do that as a society through our efforts, whether it be through what you guys are doing, or for example, like what we're doing as creating a machine, if you will, that I like to call it a machine. They call it a printer. It's a machine. That allows things to happen that wouldn't have happened prior, right? So same with like content development or this podcast we're doing, right? People wouldn't have known the things we're talking about, or been able to have maybe been motivated or excited or whatever prior to hearing this or seeing your beautiful faces. Look at that beard. I mean, come on. Anybody.
I say I've got a face for radio, right? I mean, that's why I cover it with a beard.
Face for AM radio? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're killing AM radios, right? So I mean, maybe I'm old enough, I guess. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's great. AM radio. I miss AM radio. No, I'm just kidding.
So Abraham, how can people find you?
It used to be where you just did the hashtag Abraham stunts, and it used to be all over the place. That's my older self. But if you really want to just get a hold of me or check me out, it's a real simple LinkedIn search. It's just Abraham Feld, my name. But you can check out our current website right now is Creative 3D Technologies, and that's 3D with the number, right? So Creative 3D, and then Technologies with an S. So yeah, Creative 3D Technologies omnistruct.com or LinkedIn, Abraham Feld, or I'm not so much on the other social channels as much now for myself. I do a lot of business, social, and managing and strategy, but if you want to find out who I am, send me a message and I will message you back.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you.
No, thank you.
Appreciate your time on this. And to our audience, we'd like to thank you for listening and watching. And if you've learned something today or laughed or tell somebody and follow this podcast.
Yeah.
Again, thank you. And this has been another great episode of Pineapple on Pizza with your hosts, John Riley and George Usey. We'll see you next time. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thanks, George. Thanks, John. Appreciate you guys. Great time. Great show. I love the name, by the way.
Thank you all for joining another great episode of Pineapple on Pizza. You can find show notes, links, and resources by visiting omnistruct.com/blog. And a huge thank you to all who are preventatively protecting organizations from cyber threats.